Well, fun. Hey, welcome to the Photo Report here with Caroline Tran. And she's a just beautiful photographer, and going to hear a little bit about her story. You're a film shooter, you shoot weddings, kids, families, commercial stuff. Can you just sort of start out how you got into photography, and we'll go from there.
So I was a physics major in high school, in college.
Uh-huh.
And
typical courses that photographers take.
Right. And like I loved my high school physics teacher, and so when I had to pick a major, I was like, physics, that's what it's going to be. And the first year I loved it. Crashing cars and things that you can play with.
Yeah.
Fun. Then it started to get really theoretical, and I was like, oh, this is not what I thought I got myself into. So I wanted to switch majors, and basically what it came down to was if I had switched majors, I would be in college for 7 years, and not going to happen. So I took an art minor, and that's when I actually tried photography for the first time. Yeah, film. I was in the darkroom. I loved it. Afterwards, I was like, what do I do with my physics major? I'm going to teach. So I was going to I got into the UCLA teacher education program for physics, and what still cracks me up is that my photography instructor was like, oh, so what are you going to do next year? I was like, oh, I'm starting grad school at UCLA for education. He's like, I actually teach extension courses there. You should totally come and audit. I see so much potential, and like I can control.
For photography?
Yeah, for photography. He's like, I won't even charge you. Like I can control who comes in and out. Just come. And I was like, oh, I don't have time for hobbies. Like, I'm going to be a new grad student, right?
Right.
So then after that, I didn't pick up a camera again.
Yeah.
And then went into high school physics. I became a high school physics teacher. And while I was getting married myself, that's when I discovered the whole world of just weddings.
Right.
And I just love the industry. Like, not necessarily the photography, but obviously you're looking at the photos, right, to see what everyone else did on the wedding. And at the time, it was like the Knot Forum was where all the brides were chatting. And so,
what year did you get married?
2006.
Okay.
And so I was just looking at a lot of photographers' blogs and photos, and I was just really inspired by how they were able to capture stories of people. I've always loved telling stories, but I'm not good with words. So this interview is difficult because I have to use my words. But I'm not good with words. And so when I just saw what they were able to do with pictures, like that just really spoke to me. And so the school I was teaching at, they had bought a camera, and I asked, can I use it on the weekends? So I would take it home on the weekends, bring it back on the weekdays. And I would just start shooting coworkers' kids, anyone who was willing to get in front of my camera, like married friends, take off your wedding ring. Now we're doing an engagement session.
Yeah.
And just practice on them. And then the first time the thought of doing it professionally came up was I went to a friend's wedding, and I brought my camera. I was not one of those in the aisle. I stayed in my seat. But afterwards, she's like, I like a lot of your photos more than my real wedding photos. Like, you should really consider doing this. And then just, I guess, as people started seeing my work, and it's like, oh, people want to pay me for this? That's
pretty cool.
Yeah, I could actually do what something that I thought was just a hobby. And so the first gig I got was a coworker's cousin. She said, hey, my cousin's getting married. They're having an engagement party. Would you be open to shooting it, for a small fee? And then if they like your work, they can hire you. And so I went ahead and I want this. And so after taking it, I had to learn so much. I don't recommend learning this way, but I'm very much learn as you go type of person. So, got a second body, I think I used Flash for the first time at this wedding.
Yeah.
And then, fortunately enough, they actually paid me pretty well for being my first gig. And then they hired me for their wedding and engagement session.
Oh, amazing.
And it was the engagement party was a Vietnamese one, and so the ceremony is very similar to the actual what they do on a wedding day.
Right.
So I was able to use that as my portfolio as well, and yeah.
Neat. And then sort of from there, you just started. People found out about you and started asking, or did you start to try to get out there like, I'm going to do this and really pursue it?
I think a lot of it was word of mouth. I started a portrait business without even realizing I was starting a portrait business, because as soon as weddings were being booked, a lot of the weddings weren't happening for another 6 months to a year. So I was just trying to get as much practice as I could leading up to that.
Yeah.
So I was like, the most accessible things were people, like families. So I was just shooting a lot of families, and from there, word of mouth. And so by the time I shot my first wedding, I had a portrait business going already.
That's pretty incredible. And then when did you stop teaching and then really go like full time with photography?
So I'm incredibly fortunate that business took off really fast. Within a year, my calendar was completely booked.
Wow.
And so for 1.5 years of teaching, I actually was basically doing 2 full-time jobs at the same time. Right after school ended at 3:30, I was off to do an engagement session, come back, edit until the wee hours of the night. Didn't have kids, obviously, at this time. Weddings on the weekends. And we were doing weddings almost every weekend at this time. So finally, I thought to myself, I first told my mom, because I was like, Mom, photography is actually going really well. I'm actually pretty busy with it.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's good, but don't let it affect your real job.
Right. Yeah.
And so I had to slowly get her used to the idea. It's actually, I think I can sustain myself on this. And I'm not that big of a risk taker. And so what I had to do was, I knew what my teaching salary was. So I had to think about, okay, how many weddings can I realistically take a year, divide my salary up by that,
right,
after cost and all, right? It's okay, so I can't quit until I reach this price point.
Right.
Then I can quit teaching. And so luckily I got to my goal within a year and a half.
Nice.
And so at that point I was like, okay, I can comfortably leave teaching and know that I'll make the same salary.
Right. What was that number of weddings? Do you remember? How many weddings did you have to shoot to?
I think I said it was, I don't even remember now. I want to wait till that's done.
That's right.
I can't remember exactly how many it was, but I remember I said that I had to get to 5,000 for when my starting packages is 5,000, then I can quit. Then I can quit teaching.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, I had to redo this math again when I was pregnant for the first time, because I was like, okay, that number that I thought I could do, I can't do that anymore, because I was doing 40 weddings, 45 weddings a year for the first 2 years that I went that I let go of the teaching job.
Right.
I was doing 45 weddings a year.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant, and I was like, okay, 45 is not realistic.
No. And you try to keep it about how many now? Do you limit yourself?
Now I try to do 2 a month, sometimes 3 during the busy season, but but it balances out with slow season. So I think 2 a month is my happy place.
Yeah, keeps you going. Get to get out there and then be home every once in a while. Neat. I love, part of the conversations that I like to have is really just the business side, and things that, can you think back, what do you feel like is the biggest positive thing that you've done for your business that has made a difference or sort of shaped you into where you are today?
Well, I think one of the things that made me sustainable, because I think, what's the statistic, 50% of businesses go out of business in the first year or something like that?
I'll go with
and
that.
then I think of those 50%, I think another third or something like that within the next 2 years after that.
Right.
And so I think what helped me is, before going into this, I had goals. I set goals, and I knew, I questioned like I always asked myself, like, what kind of photographer do I want to be? Like, I kept my target audience really targeted. I mean, obviously, as I'm building portfolio, I'm taking what I could get, but just making sure that I'm showing what I want to get. And for everything I was shooting, I was trying to make it look like what the next wedding I want to book from this to look like. And the other thing that I knew is I did not want to be a cheap photographer. Like, I was really careful about, like, I don't want to get stigmatized or having a reputation for being like, oh, she's like the cheap photographer, you know, because I didn't want to get stuck there. Like, I feel like if I got stuck there, then it would be hard to, like, you know, get out of it. And so really early on, I was being really careful about, like, raising my prices to get to where I need to be.
Yeah, and was, like, within that, what are things that what was hard about trying to not become the affordable photographer? Like, what were things that you intentionally did to not be price cheap? I mean, because whether that was probably, like, having to say no, or, like, what was difficult about that?
I would say difficulty would be, one, saying no, like turning down certain weddings, just one, because, like, I want to deliver a certain level of service.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't feel like I could do the best that I could do, then like, it wouldn't be fair to them or me, you know? And so, but I'm a yes person. I just like saying yes to everybody, you know? And so, like, just being able to, like, acknowledge that, you know, this is not my strength. This is not the type of, whether it's the lighting or the story. Like, I'm a big storyteller, and so if it's a story that I'm not completely connecting with, I don't think I would do justice in trying to tell their story with a story that I don't understand, right? Yeah. And so just trying to keep my clientele like someone that I really would connect with. And I always joke that it's like, I'm not looking for a one-night stand. Like, I'm looking for a client who I really will connect with and keep in touch with for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, good one-night stand comparison. When you said that early on you really knew and not set up, but you knew what kind of photographer you wanted to be and what you wanted your images to either look like or hopefully look like. What was that early on, and then has that changed?
It's neat for me to look back at my old pictures because I feel like style-wise, not much has changed. The main thing that has changed would be, like, the editing, the color, like the way I was able to get the photos to look. I think in the beginning, I wasn't film in the beginning, I was digital in the beginning. And so just being able to edit the digital to look like what I want it to look like. And I would say that was, what was the question?
Your early on you had said, like, I knew what I wanted.
Oh, and how
what kind of photographer I wanted to be and what that style was. So saying, like, what was that then, I guess? Like,
I would say, like, composition is very similar. The storytelling aspect, like, is very similar, and the colors are the main difference. Like, when I look at how I process some of my old photos, that was embarrassing. Yeah. But I do look at some of them like, oh, I bet I could re-post process some of them and make it look better. Like, make it look like how it
more
would
your
look
style
today.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. When did you start shooting film, and why?
I started.
Obviously, you began at school shooting film.
Yeah, I began in college with film, and then when I picked up the camera again in, what was it, like 2007 or something, it was digital. It was foreign to me because I was not used to having to post-process on a computer after. And so in 2009, I started trying to integrate film into my work again. And it's been great. Like, the colors are exactly what I want. I hand off the film, the lab takes care of it, and it comes back the way I like it.
Magic.
Yeah.
So yeah, God, this camera just shut off. With film, like, why did you go back to starting to shoot film? Like, obviously shooting digital, it's going to cost a lot more. What made you want to shoot film?
Shall we do that?
No, you're good.
Okay. obviously there is a price. The cost is significantly more with
Yes.
film, as you know. So I think that was like the next big adjustment in my business, was that, I didn't want to lose out on the profits, right? If by switching over to this.
Yeah.
So I did the math again and was like, okay, how much on average? Like, I feel like if anyone's trying to get into film, I would recommend you just have to get out and do it, because so that you, like, I needed to get a feel for how much I shoot, like how heavy-handed I
Right.
am with the shutter. So I slowly integrated, like, a few rolls into portrait sessions first, just to start getting a feel for, one, to develop confidence in not being able to see what the photos
Right.
look like. And two, just because it's also a work in progress with your lab too,
Yeah.
to try to get the colors the way you like it. So once that was streamlined, then it's like, all right, let's try it with a few portrait sessions, try to get a feel for how many rolls of film I shoot per session. So then once that was pretty streamlined, it's like, all right, how much does it cost me extra now to shoot film?
Right.
How much does my price point have to be? And so I just raised prices to be able to sustain shooting film.
Yeah. Do you remember, outside of like having like an old interest in film, like was there something you saw, like what obviously made you think like, okay, I think I want to start integrating film into my system? Was it like someone whose work inspired you, or just like, I just want to try it? Like, what was it?
Yeah, Jose Villa.
Okay. Part of the guy.
Yeah, so I went to his workshop in 2009.
Okay.
I actually didn't even think I had any interest in film at the time. I went with the digital camera and thought that
And your mind was blown.
Yeah, well, I thought that I'd be, like, if I attend his workshop, I'll be able to get my digital photos to look like his film photos.
Right.
I don't think I thought, like, I never said that explicitly, but I think I didn't think of shooting film because I thought I'd be able to, make it look pretty. And so, but after that, I think I was like, oh, like, the photos don't look the same.
Yeah.
So, and I don't like the colors so much, and I'm spending a lot of time editing this. And shortly after that, I got pregnant. And so that's when, well, one thing about me is I've always been the type of student who falls asleep in class. I can't sit, like, with someone speaking and me sitting, like, as a student, instantly fall asleep. And so, same thing with editing. It's the same effect, with sitting in front of a computer. I was always on the keyboard like this. And so I was like, okay, this is not sustainable. Like, how can I need a different way. Like, I can't be behind the computer editing because obviously I'm falling asleep. And so that's what kind of motivated me to integrate film. Well, it wasn't necessarily film, but it was just that I'm pregnant. I want to have a life with my kids. I don't want to always be working. So what are ways that I can have a life back again? And so just exploring options, like, okay, if I bring in an assistant, what kind of tasks can I hand off to them? Film was an option to cut down on the editing time. And that just happened to be the path that worked for me. But yeah, like, just trying to outsource as much of the boring task that I could.
Yeah. Within that sort of topic of life and having a family and a business that has got you busy, what are some things, because we had a conversation a little bit ago, that you were talking about, just things that you've intentionally done to create boundaries in sort of work and life and being able to have that bit of a balance. Can you sort of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, now I have 2 kids. So when number 2 was an infant, it was easy because he just slept a lot. But as soon as he needed more interaction, I was like, well, I don't want to miss out on his childhood, So what we decided as a family was that it would be worth paying for the daycare. So now they're both in school Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And that is my work time. I squeeze in as many shoots as I can, my computer time as I can during those days. Tuesday, Thursday is like exclusively for me and the little one. Just because I want him to have, like, I just feel bad that, like, with number 1, we had a lot of one-on-one time. And I don't want number 2 to feel like he didn't have that. So Tuesday, Thursdays are my one-on-one time with him. And then weekends are pretty much only for for family time unless I have a wedding.
Yeah.
Which I try to make it no more than twice a month.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like it's the constant struggle of being able to, I mean, it's hard to running your own business to shut off and to stop answering email, but it's such an important thing to have that bit of structure.
Yeah, and so they come home around 5:30, between 5:30 and 6, and so I'm off the computer at that time.
Yeah.
It's dinner time, playing, reading books, and then I go to sleep when they go to sleep.
Yeah. Neat. Within just sort of work and business now, what are things that you are loving and sort of striving to do more of, or growth, or anything like that?
What I'm loving right now is like family sessions. I think because I really relate to it. I'm relating to the mom, and when I see like the babies grow, a lot of them like will either parallel my kids' development, so it's just fun to see. And I fit them in Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And so I do a lot of babies maternity boudoir stuff during the week, and it's fun because it's different. And the fun thing about shooting kids is that you can't plan it. Like they don't, they dictate which direction the shoot goes. You can't style it, so to speak, like the way like an engagement session would be. And so they take me to the direction they want the shoot to go. And I think that's just fun.
Love that. And within sort of business now, I think there are some things that you did early on that a lot of people don't do, which is maybe set goals and then really think about what they want their image to be. What are things that, just through maybe mistakes or learning, what are things now that you feel like are really beneficial, like glad you did, or beneficial to your business? Does that make sense?
I think things that, I guess kind of related is that I feel like especially as a business owner and mom, it's easy to feel like you're failing at both. Like, you're not good, you're not a good enough parent, you're not a good enough business person. When you're with the business, you feel guilty for being away from family and vice versa. So I feel that resetting goals every year has been really important for me, because really just for me to feel personally satisfied. I think not comparing to other people has been really important, like unplugging. Like I don't follow, I don't read wedding blogs, I don't follow other photographers, unless we're personal friends, like, that's different. But I'm not comparing looks because I don't want to know what other people are doing, because honestly, it does make me feel bad. If I see someone, like, so for example, prior to being pregnant, I did a lot of destination weddings. And that was like half of my business. And of course, if I'm seeing like, especially if I know it's like an inquiry that I had to pass up, I'd rather not see it, honestly, like I don't want to know what I missed out on. I'm happy for them, obviously, but I don't want to like fall into the rut of like, I'm not doing enough for myself, like I really want to stay clear with my own goals, and stay focused on what I wanted to do this year. And I think that has been really important in my happiness. And my goals these past few years have just been to be personally happy and to maintain family balance. And that is different every year. Like how I achieve it is different every year, but I think it's important to have that like conversation with my family, with myself, on how that's going to look this year.
Absolutely. I think if you don't think about that, it's easy to just get caught up in either life or being too busy and not having, I feel like balance is something that is definitely done with intentionality. It doesn't just happen, so that's really neat to hear. And just as a affirmation in that, as a dad, it's like, that's my biggest struggle, is feeling like it's that deal of like, we're all this stage of like really growing business and thriving in certain areas and senses, but then it's like you have a family and they're at that stage of like growing and needing attention, and and it's a really tricky balance of feeling like literally failing at everything, because it is so easy to get caught in that comparison game of being like, oh, this person, or this like younger photographer now is doing, working with this person, or traveling, and it's like, it is the worst place to be, to constantly be comparing yourself to other people, because you're just going to leave you dissatisfied.
Yeah. And it's not productive.
No.
It doesn't get you anywhere other than deeper into this hole, you know? So it's, I try to, and occasionally I do fall into that, and I have to be very conscious about it, and like, all right, you're starting to compare, like, let's refocus on what your goals are. What will make you happy this year, and let's stick to that.
What are things that make you happy? Like, what else do you do? Or like, if you guys have a day off with the family, what are things you guys go do?
Just family time makes me happy.
Yeah.
Just like anything that, just seeing them running and laughing around, or even just like rolling around the floor with them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Within back to business, because you teach workshops. How many of those are you still doing? Those? How many of those do you do?
It's so labor intensive. I feel like I'm not sure if others are aware of how much work it is, but there's a lot of pre-planning to it, and then there's a lot of follow-up afterwards. Just making sure that everyone's taken care of and happy, and being the host of it. There's a lot of responsibility. And so I typically plan them with pretty short notice, because it's kind of stressful leading up to it.
Yeah.
So I don't plan it until I'm like, all right, I'm ready to really devote this time to it. So I've noticed that we tend to not do it with more than a few months notice.
Right.
Like I did one recently in Singapore with like 4-day notice.
Crazy. 4-day notice? How'd it go?
It was great. I mean, I think it's equivalent to like to procrastinating, though. You don't stress about it until
then you cram it in, and it's really hard 4 days.
So I mean, we were there unfortunately for a funeral.
Okay.
But I figure, let's extend it, and we'll stay a few extra days just for fun. And so I posted on social media like, hey, I'm going to be in Singapore for between these dates, does anyone either want to do a shoot or want a mentoring session?
Yeah.
And so a few people reached out like, hey, I'm interested in mentoring. So then when I was at LAX, I got an email from one of the wedding blog, like one of the biggest wedding blogs out there.
Oh, wow.
And the Wedding Scoop. And she offered like, hey, like I'd love to help. What do you need? I was like, I need vendors. I don't know anyone out there.
Yeah.
And so I gave her an idea of, like what type of flowers I typically like, what kind of gowns, and she sent me like different links of people who she thinks would fit my style. As soon as I landed in Singapore, I gave her a call and was like I looked up all the links she sent me, and then I gave her a call and said, all right, can you reach out to these and these people, see if they're available? Let's try for this Friday, which was like in 3 days, I think.
That's amazing.
So then, we planned in 3 days, did a big push for like, hey, who's available, and then who wants to participate.
Yeah.
And then the day before, I went scouting the locations that she suggested, and then I saw this just beautiful swing set, like iron swing set in the middle of a park. I took a picture with it on my phone, sent it to the florist, and said, can you decorate this with flowers? She was like, yeah, I could do that. I was like, done.
Yeah, amazing. How cool. So within your workshops, what do you typically cover? Like, if someone is coming to one of your workshops, what would they expect? Or like, what are the things that you love teaching about?
I love teaching about setting goals and having a business plan. I think a lot of people are so like busy with like I feel like and I say this because I can see myself falling into this, where you're so busy becoming that artist that you don't realize that you can easily become the starving artist.
Yeah.
Like if you're too like, I guess like, because I feel like being the artist in one sense means doing it for your own art.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like, if you're a portrait or wedding photographer, or even a commercial photographer, you're an artist, but you're straddling being an artist and being in the service industry too.
Right.
Because you are trying to please these clients. While the nice thing about, if you market yourself well, that your clients will be in line with your art.
Yeah.
But in the end, I would say like, it's not like, let's say family portraits at a wedding is probably not not the most creative thing to do, but that's where it's really important for the service aspect of it. These are going to be so important for the family and the clients, right? And so that's like where it's important that you have to like how to please both.
Right.
How do you fulfill the artist side in you, but also be a good business person and be sustainable and actually make a living on this? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy important. You know, what do you think is the most important thing to be sustainable as a photographer?
I think having like one, you have to have financial goals.
Yeah.
Like you need to know what you need to make. Like don't wait until tax seasons to realize that, oh, I'm not profitable this year, right? Like that was a whole year that went by already. So just clearly knowing what your costs are in the business, knowing what you need to charge, what your margins are, and how many things you need to book.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're going to shoot films, like I don't, being able to recognize, okay, I'm going to shoot this many per event, or like knowing that there's going to be costs, you're going to have a second shooter, you know, et cetera, like how many times I lost money traveling, but then again, I love traveling, you know, for events. But yeah, that's such good advice. And just that whole balance of recognizing that you've got bills and got to pay those, plus it costs money to shoot. So figuring out really what does it cost to live, and then what do you have to shoot to actually make that happen? Right.
And I just feel like with my workshop, like I do assess their packages as well. And for the most part, most people are either not charging enough, and or the pricing doesn't make sense. You know, like when they're building up on the packages, it just like, you're not making more money. Right. Like the package technically costs more money, but you've included so many things that you're actually making less money now.
Yeah, that's incredible. Neat. And then when you did a book, right, was that a book that you self-did, or was that partnership with?
It was a partnership. Okay. So with Knock from Skybox Events.
Okay.
Yeah, she wanted to do a party planning book. So she reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be the photographer for this book. And we partnered up with a nutritionist who did recipes. So it was like a full entertaining book.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how'd that do for you?
It was a great experience. Yeah. Like, I mean, it was, honestly, I never even thought of doing a book before. So when she first approached me, I was like, this had never crossed my mind before. Yeah. Like, you know, this is like checking off a bucket list that I wasn't even on my bucket list. So totally. But I felt like it was great exposure because I got a taste for what that was like. And so now I actually do have books like in mind.
Yeah. Love it. So what's next for you? What are you, is it just sort of going, or like what you're saying, you've got other books in mind?
Yeah, like I'm trying to work on a travel series, like a travel photography book series. Like it's, a lot of this came from like like just taking more time to do personal work for myself. Like I feel like, you know, like I said, I know what my goals are business-wise, what I need to do. And so now, you know, what can I do to fulfill my own creative need, right? And so my husband actually gave me the idea for this because he heard a podcast about, I guess it was like really high-paying jobs that just suck. Yeah. Like, I think one was like cleaning the sewers or something, like something of that equivalent, right? And so, but when he was listening to the interviews of these people, one guy made a point. He's like, you know, like a lot of people wait for like to be fulfilled by their, you know, like they want a job that makes them fulfilled. Right. You know, and so a lot of people will hop from job to job because they don't feel fulfilled by it. But he
plays on people's marriages as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think millennials are really known for doing this. And I kind of straddle that generation as well. And so the advice that these workers were saying is like, why don't you bring your passion to your job? Like rather than trying to find a job that makes you fulfilled, like bring your passion to this job, you know? So for example, like I mean, at this point, I'm totally paraphrasing. I think I've completely put my own interpretation to this because I didn't hear about it. But it's like, for example, if you're really passionate about photography, like if if I was, let's say, back with my teaching days, right? Like, let me bring photography to teaching.
Yeah.
You know, like, let me teach photography, which is what I do with my workshops.
Right.
Let me be the photographer for the school events, right? Which is what I did. I photographed prom and like all those events back when I was a teacher. And so, so then my husband was like, you know, what do we like to do? We like to travel, you know, but it's getting more difficult to do destination weddings specifically with kids. He's like, so why don't you do travel books? Because then now we can bring the kids still, we can still get the traveling done, and it's still part of your work. And
beautiful.
Yeah.
So are you now setting like a couple trips a year you're going to go with the family? And
yeah, so we started with Tokyo. Like, so with the Singapore trip, we piggybacked Tokyo off of that. And then we recently did a wedding in New York, and so I did a few personal days there as well. And it's fun. Like, I feel like this year I'm been more passionate about the photography, like different than I have been in the past. Like more because I'm doing these personal things. Like I feel like I'm not confined to what the industry is expecting of me,
right,
or what the client is expecting because of what they've seen I've done. So like I'm able to just photograph, like, I think this screw in the bridge looks really interesting, you know? Like, obviously if it was a wedding, they would not care about what the screw looked like, you know? But I want to try to make this screw look really artsy. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, yeah, personal projects are lifebloods. And so outside of travel, do you do other sort of personal work for things, or?
Yesterday, I actually, like, I've been more, perhaps because I'm the age that my parents were when they immigrated here. They've told me stories in the past, and I could not care less. Like, I just didn't get it, you know, when they had to flee Vietnam during the Vietnam War. I did not understand it at all. Now, when I'm, like, what was it, the 30th or 40th anniversary or something was this year, and so I was hearing a lot more stories, and now when I hear the stories, I realize that's my age. Yeah. And I'm like, it just hits home more to me, you know, like, just trying to comprehend, like, wow, having to pick up and leave and flee a country, you know? And so I'm trying, I want to do something with that. I don't know quite what yet, but I started yesterday with just documenting my mom and her sisters. I got them over, I got a hair makeup artist over, got them all dolled up, and just trying to capture the relationship, you know, and then I don't know where it will lead, but I just want to, I just want to shoot for myself more this year. Yeah,
good for you. Part of why I met with my grandpa just before this interview, but part of it is I want to do a little mini documentary just to hear, all these stories are going to be lost with this generation of, you know, early World War II days and being involved with that, and, you know, just times were so different, but it's like, I'm really intrigued by those stories. So
were you in always, or was it more so now that you're?
Yeah, more so now. My dad is a storyteller in general, but half the stuff I was telling to my grandpa was like, he's like, how fun, like my dad basically was telling me how my grandpa was like the boxing champion on the boat, and he's like, oh no, that wasn't me, that was my friend, you know. And he's just laughing. My dad's a little bit of a tall tale kind of guy. But neat. So where can people find more of your work? And then if they ever want to get notified of one of your workshops, where would they sign up for that and hear about it?
Instagram would be at Caroline Tran. That would be like the most instant place. And then my Facebook, professional Facebook page as well.
Cool. And you can just find that, just Google your name in there?
Yeah, I think it's just like facebook.com/Caroline Tran Photographer.
Okay. Easy enough. Well, hey, thanks so much, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All
thanks.
right. Yeah.